The 80s had the General. The 90s had John Gilligan. In the noughties, it was the reign of Martin Marlowe Hyland. His was a familiar path with success and power, and then the recklessness. He had to go, because with him, an innocent young man doing an honest day's work died. Crime World presents Caught in the Crossfire, the unsolved murders of coke kingpin Marlowe Hyland and innocent Anthony Campbell. Available now on all podcast platforms. How are you?
I'm okay. Nicola, how are you?
Really, how are you?
I feel fantastic, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel good, you know. Why have you got to?
Just wondering.
I feel like every moment of kindness, there's something coming in, following up. So,
yeah,
you know, like at this hyper.
Says
No, just hyper awareness, you know.
Just that summer's here, and
yeah,
I was just wondering how you were.
Look, I'm.
You've mixed it all up for the summer, have you?
Things are totally different. Every day is a new day, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm enjoying the summer. Yeah, lots of exciting stuff.
5K job.
I tell you what. Yeah, great drawing. You get great drawing on the line. That's the sort of.
I wouldn't know.
If that's the sort of excitement
line in years.
But you did manage to fool our viewers there. You put on your coat, didn't you? She said, "I've been wearing," because we've recorded them in a row.
We've recorded something else, you see. So
yeah.
I put on my coat in hope that just in case that it would look as if it was a different day.
Yeah.
That's a classic kind of a little
It's a little TV trick.
Yeah, it's a little TV trick. I should have a whole different wardrobe, actually, maybe.
You should.
I know somebody's going to complain and say my hair is like nothing on earth because I cycled in. But anyway.
Well, once I'm on
Screen
with you, Nicola, the viewers will be focused on me. It's like Marilyn Monroe. Just...
You're like Marilyn Monroe.
Well, something like that.
Yeah. Right. Well, listen, got a little bit of a story to tell you, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Because it shows a few things, really. And it's maybe the way prisoners get contraband.
Yeah.
Because they get it in all different ways. And we've spoken before about how the kitchen in particular, Mount Joy, because it's so vast, a lot of contraband moves through there. But this was a little trick that Nicky McConnell came up with. Now, Nicky McConnell is due for trial for the murder of the monk's nephew, Gareth Hutch. So already Jonathan Keogh, his sister Regina Keogh, and Thomas Tossie Fox have been convicted in relation to this murder. And he was actually returned from Turkey.
Yeah.
So Nicky McConnell was due for trial. Let's have a look at when that was.
Yeah.
It was last June.
Yeah.
And 6 weeks were set aside in the Special Criminal Court, which is so busy that there's two of them running most of the time. But unfortunately, one of the judges got sick, so the trial had to be rescheduled. So we were just musing between ourselves, when is that coming up? It shows how busy the court is, that they haven't found 6 weeks in a year. But no doubt it'll happen over the coming months, or certainly it'll get going into next year. But anyway, so in the meantime, he's languishing behind bars, and he is wondering how to get a little bit of tablets or whatever it is he takes in. So he had a visitor.
Yeah.
And basically, when the visit finished, he stood up thinking he was covering the cameras, because of course the prisoners all know where the cameras are watching them, right? So he stood up to kind of stand in the way of the camera, and his visitor threw an empty Tayto pack into the bin that he'd enjoyed while he was there. And this bin is due to be collected later in the day and emptied by Gerard Cruz, who's one of the men, we'll describe him shortly, he's serving a prison sentence in relation to his role in the murder of Cian Mulready Woods. So anyway, in the Tayto packet was the pills.
Yeah.
So basically, Cruz was going to lift the bins, take out the Tayto bag, put his hand in, take the stash for Nicky McConnell, and give them to him later on in the day. It's quite...
Well, it's quite ingenious.
Clever little move, but of course they were caught. And the prison officers were watching quite closely and discovered it. I'd say you can let nothing go if you're working in prison.
Now, Nicky McConnell might say he knew nothing about it, and it's just coincidence that his visitor threw it into the bin, and his associate would have collected it. But you see, like the sale of drugs in prison, it serves two purposes really. Like one of the big ways to make prison comfortable for people is the ability to get drugs into the system, because it is really the ultimate power in there. So if you can have people bring you in drugs, you know, your life can all of a sudden become far, far more comfortable. Not only because you make money, but because you have a certain power within there. Nicky McConnell is a prisoner of note, I think, on the wing in Portlaoise prison. He is associated with the Kinahan gang in one way, but he is a separate organisation as well. So yeah, like it's ingenious. I mean, a lot of the drugs actually come in, although we hear we've seen a lot about drones in recent times, and drone deliveries have become a huge thing in the UK and here, where people are, you know, the ability to maneuver a drone, like everybody can do it now, really.
I can't.
Well, you can't, but we've actually had they're on TikTok delivering the drones into the Irish prison services. We've got them up on the website.
That company that were delivering coffees to your door.
Yeah.
Are they still about? I did think that was the ultimate in serious laziness.
Yeah.
Like that you needed a drone to deliver your coffee, that you couldn't, if you were at home, surely you could make a coffee.
You would think so.
Was the point of those coffees in cups that other people make, not because you're on the move, you're on the go,
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I suppose, but certainly the drones into the prisons, like they put it up on TikTok and you can see it flying in, and they are maneuverable.
Yeah.
I probably couldn't do it. You definitely couldn't do it.
There's no way.
But one can do it quite easily. So a lot of the drugs are coming in there, but that's probably still the lesser bit of it.
Yeah.
Still a lot of them come in through visits, through prisoners getting day release in particular.
I would say 100% most of it comes in through visits, and whatever about it being available for sale, you probably can't rely on that in case the supply route has somewhat been disrupted, in case you don't have the money to pay, or you've built up a debt to somebody else. So those visits, those personal visits that people, I'm sure in many cases, in a huge percentage of cases, there's an attempt to pass something in.
Yeah, I mean, the old traditional way wasn't it? The girlfriend had them in the mouth under their tongue, and they'd have an owl kiss and pass it across.
Are they allowed to have a kiss now?
I don't think they are actually, but I could stand to be corrected. I think there's different prisoners in different circumstances, but that was obviously one
I
of the
wasn't totally sure
ones.
they were able to have physical contact. I'm sure with kids and stuff they are.
But there are different. I mean, there's different categories of security
of kids,
as well.
There was, of course, discoveries of drugs hidden down nappies and babies' bottles. And everything.
And in a lot of the buggies as well, which will go through the prison system. But a lot of it is then as well. I mean, every week, if you look at the district courts in the leash papers in particular, you know, the least nationalists and these, you see every single week, you'll see a family member caught bringing in drugs into a prisoner. And
they're prosecuting them. They're
prosecute them. They'll nearly always get suspended sentences. Yeah. I could write the stories myself.
Feels like a bit of a waste of court time and of everybody.
Well, maybe, but I could write this thing.
Yeah.
The mother brings in the drugs.
Yeah.
She says, I was forced to do it because my son was told he was going to be killed in prison unless I brought them in. And she's bringing in usually prescription tablets, Xanax, or a bit of hash or whatever. And it writes themselves. It's the same excuse every time. And you know what?
Again, perhaps it's an excuse, but I have no doubt that people are threatened and ordered to get stuff brought in.
They are, because what happens is it's not just the guys that are on the wing that are the low security prisoners, or, you know, they're in there for whatever, few month sentences. They get told, you have to get this in. And then those prisoners as well might get day release. At times, these guys that aren't on the radar as being drug dealers, and they get told and they get brought that they have to bring things in. Somebody's going to meet you and you have to take this in internally, let's put it that way.
I know.
Yeah.
Are you saying that like as if I'm going to be completely shocked?
Well, you are. Well, you did give a little, it's not.
I just think it's a bit gross, but apart from that.
It's gross.
It's what?
It is a touch gross.
It's a touch gross.
So that's a lot.
I'm not that polite that I can't discuss that. I do know that things are brought in internally, and phones and all that.
The phones, yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so, of course, they have the the chairs, the X-ray chairs or
They're
whatever.
smaller phones than that.
They are smaller phones than that, Nicola. They fit in the prison pocket, as it's called.
As it's called. I find it interesting that Gerard Cruz is the guy whose job is to collect the bins and who's obviously been somewhat, brought into this situation. I wouldn't have thought it was a business opportunity he saw himself. Look, Cruz is what? Is he in his early 50s?
Yeah.
He was living in Drogheda and Lower Sherrod Street, Dublin. He hadn't a conviction for a long time.
No.
When he pleaded guilty to a charge that it's a complicated one with knowledge of the existence of a criminal organisation. He facilitated the murder of Cian Mulready Woods at Rathmullen Park, Drogheda, County Louth, between the dates of January 11th and 13th, 2020. Now, Cruz basically met with Cian Mulready Woods and Paul Crosby at Ballsgrove shops and drove them to Rathmullen Park to a house owned by a guy called Jed McKenna, who had been sent on his way while Robbie Lawler met with them at the back of the house. And I think Cruz was also involved in some of the cover-up stuff in the aftermath of it. So he was, I mean, it's a big thing to be caught up in the Cian.
Yeah, I mean, he
murder.
didn't obviously he got I think a 7.5-year sentence, and the court was told he met him and brought him back, and that he obviously wasn't prosecuted for murder because his excuse would be that he
remained outside.
And he would say that he didn't know he was going to be killed, so it wasn't a joint enterprise. However, Justice Hunt said at the time that the chief suspect for the murder was Robbie Lawler, a criminal, and as he describes him, of significant notoriety and linked to several murders, who was heavily involved in a feud, and therefore both Crosby and Cruz must have had some knowledge of the capacities of the person they were assisting, as in they knew Cian Mulready Woods was going back there and Robbie Lawler was capable of almost anything. So Cruz kind of, certainly in his defence, more or less put it up that he was being, I suppose, bossed around and intimidated by more dangerous people than him. And it just seems that pattern continues in his prison.
But I mean, also that he is a bit of a survivor and he knows that you have to do something to kind of keep in with people and, a bit of a, what would you say, a bit of a sleevine or something?
A bit of a sleevine, but certainly, still doing the dirty work for other people, literally collecting stuff out of bins,
Yeah, literally. But it was an interesting listen. I'm sure the stories like that every day of the week in the prisons, but it just does give us an insight into the kind of methods that they use and how realistically all the prisoners are probably, well, certainly a lot of them are working together to kind of keep that.
Yeah.
The place supplied.
Yeah, I mean, it's the ingenuity that goes into getting contraband into prisons is almost never ending, And
Nicky McConnell would not be known as a master criminal, I can tell you. He's somebody who has tried to come across, or I think he believes himself to be a little bit cleverer maybe than he is. Would you say that?
Well,
tried to manipulate systems before and it hasn't really worked for him.
Yeah, I mean, maybe so. I mean, he certainly, he was associated with some very serious criminals that we've mentioned before and was famously pictured with Jim Mansfield Jr. as well at one point during, in advance of this. He's been on remand a long time now. It shows the Special Criminal Court has started to lag. If these issues arise, even the judiciary themselves have made a point that the Special Criminal Court is overburdened effectively, and that came as a result really of the policing of the feud. That all of a sudden there was a huge rage of criminals being funneled into the system, including Nicky McConnell. His case started, as you said, and in the opening statements, it was, you heard the allegations against him quite specifically that he had watched Garrett Hutch's apartment from a window with Jonathan Keogh, and that they had then, Garrett Hutch had obviously come out of his home in Avondale House, and when he came out, two men approached him and he was shot. It was actually caught on CCTV that was then circulated widely. I mean, most people will have seen it, and that they had been using Regina Kyo's apartment, I think, to have
as a kind of a watchtower, essentially, over, so they'd be able to see him coming out to the car, and so they could stay the night in that house for the following morning. Do you know what was interesting? When Nicky McConnell was on the run, when he was caught actually in Turkey, and he was fighting extradition back to Ireland, his father, actually Dave McConnell, he was actually brought before the courts, the father, in May of 2021, and it was heard that he collected Nicky McConnell's disability allowance after he fled the country, that he believed that he was entitled to collect his son's social welfare after he signed a form at a GP's giving him permission to do so. So while he's on the run fighting extradition to Ireland from Turkey for a murder, he's collecting his social welfare.
Now, it must be said, of course, that Nicky McConnell denies all the charges and has, pled not guilty before the courts and is likely to do so again.
Do you know what he was getting the allowance for?
For what?
The Department of Social Protection. Because it was for stress, because there was a credible threat to his life.
Yeah.
What a great little country we live in.
Well, there you go.
I'm going to just leave it at that. Thanks, Niall.
Thanks, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.